Hello there. So one of those very special moments where this is a film that I've been waiting to make for a very long time, and it's been triggered by something I read yesterday. So this goes back 10 years to 2015. In 2015 I found myself in the library in Clitheroe in Lancashire, a most unusual town, and there was a book that caught my attention. The cover was black and white, and when I began to read it, I became aware that this book was very unusual, bearing in mind this is 10 years ago. In fact, the book would have been published a little bit more than that. So back in 2012, an app was created, and the app was so successful it was turned into a book. And it was about what I'm going to call the silent ones. A lot of people are aware that some people who have very strong autism traits find it difficult to speak. And this is going to sound really strange coming from me, because I have quite a lot of difficulties with finding the right words. That's why I need to spend significant amounts of time in silence, and that's how I managed to find the right words. But in everyday conversation, it has been quite challenging for me, and a lot of people do find me to be a quiet person. So this book is set in the very near future, and it's about children who are sufficiently autistic that they don't speak. And indeed, autism first came to the world's stage attention by Dustin Hoffman playing the part of Rain Man. And the main point about Rain Man is he didn't speak. So this is actually the part of autism that the neurotypicals are familiar with. These strange people don't speak. The book moved me so very much, and a few years ago I felt such a strong impulse to find out about the book and read it again, because I knew it had a very important message, not just for myself but for the world. And I even emailed the public library service to ask them if it's any way they could find out what the title and author of this book was, bearing in mind it's such a long time ago. And I didn't get any further with my inquiries. An email address was suggested to me, and that was it. I just didn't pursue it. Somehow it wasn't the right time. And then yesterday I read an article in one of Glastonbury's well-known magazines called The Oracle. It's available online as well as a physical copy. Well, yeah, I'm struggling for words here. So the story is about these children who don't speak, and they are persecuted, abused, and experience trauma, which actually is the story of many autistic people. This isn't fiction, this is kind of reality. So many autistic people have experienced some form of bullying or abuse or torment. And these children, they realise that their safety is with each other. And they have a very special ability which people refer to as telepathy, but it goes beyond telepathy. And without using any devices, purely through the power of their own minds, they're able to connect with each other. And there's a place that they meet outside of the physical. And when the society is really breaking down very badly, they come together physically. And they find these places, and they're living in the margins, in the places where your average neurotypical will be frightened to go because derelict buildings and such like. I can't remember too much about this story, but the reason I'm so excited and having difficulty speaking today is because in the Oracle magazine there is an article. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it to you without further ado. Let's get my head torch, let's get it to work. Right, so this is what's triggered the making of this film. A couple of years ago I wrote an article about a woman named Jess who came to see me for acupuncture with the hope of trying to re-establish her psychic connection that she had formed with a severely autistic child. When he uses the word severely, he just means sufficiently autistic they don't use speech. The story began many years ago when she was an English teacher for a young, non-verbal, neurodivergent autistic children. After some time, she realised that the children were communicating with each other telepathically, and slowly they began to communicate with her in this way as well. There was one child in particular, Asher, with whom she formed a special bond with, and over the years this telepathic link blossomed to such an extent that Asher was able to dictate a book to Jez from across the country. This has now been published as a book entitled A Mind Beyond Words. Since then, this story has become a global sensation, thanks largely due to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes. And if you go on YouTube, you'll find a channel called this. It's a series created by documentary filmmaker Kai Dickens. In this podcast, Kai explores the possibilities of telepathy within the non-speaking community. She interviews many parents and carers of severe... I just don't like this term, severely autistic. He just means autistic people don't speak, who've had a sense that their children may be communicating with them psychically or even reading their minds. Recent scientific advancements have meant that it's now possible for some of these children to spell either with using a touchscreen computer or something that they can control with the gaze of their eye. This has led to a novel situation where these non-verbal children are able to share their thoughts, and the consequences of this have been staggering. Right, well, here's the point. Why has it been staggering when it's only been staggering to neurotypicals, to be quite honest with you? Anyone who's autistic is not going to find this staggering. They're going to say, yeah, well, just what I thought, really. And so what he means to say is as follows. There's a lot of controversy in the neurodivergent community about the idea of people having special powers or superpowers. And some people really don't like this term because they find it quite divisive. Now, this app, which had been turned into a book, which I read when I was living up north, I got from Clitheroe Library, it was making the point that these quiet ones, these silent ones, did have what I would call special abilities. That feels a more comfortable term. And this is what it is. I want to refer back to my recent film I made about moving medicine, and I made reference to Ravana, I do believe that's the right name, the silent guru who didn't speak and became a worldwide sensation, but particularly a national treasure of India. And our whole ashram was created all based upon his existence, and how people who did speak would go into his presence and shut up and be silent, and how they would have spiritual transformations just by being with a man who didn't speak. Right, so let's continue. In the early episodes, there are experiments where the child was put into a separate room from their mother. The mother is usually the one who's the closest carer, and the mother was shown a 4-digit number. The child would then spell out the number that they thought their mother was looking at. some of the children tested were able to get this number right over 20 times in a row. So just getting it right once by chance, the odds are 10,000 to 1 against. So 1 in 10,000 chances to get it right once, but they got it right 20 times. So multiply 10,000 by 20, starting to become a pretty big number, isn't it? However, it wasn't just numbers that were being communicated, but also words, colours, and even feelings. Well, excuse me, most especially feelings. Very, very definitely feelings, because a lot of people with autism, and I certainly do struggle communicating my feelings with people. It really takes time for me to even understand what's going on, sometimes days. As Kai continued her research, she was contacted by many parents across the states, because it's a US phenomenon, this podcast, and indeed across the world, who thought they recognized these psychic traits in their own autistic children. The research grew, and many more children were tested and proven to be amazingly telepathic. It seems as though when one sense is restricted, then another one can come to the foreground. That's a highly significant statement he just made there, and that's a great truth. So, slight digression. Yes, it's well known that people who are blind, if they are out and about with each other, then they're always amazed about the people who are non-blind, because the non-blind people, they say, good God, they haven't got any sense of smell, these people. It's like that fish and chip shop we just walked past absolutely reeked. So it is a well-known trait that the reduction or elimination of one sense can bring a great increase in sensory capabilities in other areas. Right. So, it seems as though when one sense is restricted, another one can come to the foreground. However, with further investigation, telepathy was shown to be only the tip of the iceberg. It turns out that many of these children have the capability to meet up somewhere out there, in a place that they call the Hill. This is some kind of an astral meeting place where non-verbal people can connect, communicate, and learn from each other. This may seem fanciful to the neurotypical mind, but Kai's research has shown that a child in the UK was able to demonstrate specific knowledge of another autistic child in Texas. There really was no way of them getting this information other than by meeting up in some soft, etheric realm. Obviously, the scientific community has been slow on the uptake and critique Kai's methods on the lack of double-blind studies reasoning, but maybe part of the reluctance in accepting the fact that these neurodivergent people have other senses and other abilities lies in the fact of how poorly they have been treated by the medical system in the past. And it's true, there's a particular so-called charity called Autism Speaks in America, and they have basically facilitated the abuse of children with these qualities, all based upon pathologizing them. So yes, a very emotional subject this for me. There's an unwillingness to accept that our Western rational brain reasoning may not be the only way of thinking about the world. Good grief, how primitive. But we really don't have time for the scientific paradigm to catch up. Damn right. There are thousands of these children, there's a lot more than thousands actually, out there now, and they need to be heard. Well, my comment about that is they're already being heard. They're being heard by those who have the same abilities as themselves. And the message that these non-verbal people are trying to convey, and the one they keep coming back to, is that in the end everything comes down to love. And the way to communicate truly with one another is through the heart. At one point this year, these telepathy tapes were the most listened to podcast in the world. So it seems that their message is finally, thankfully, getting out there. So this was written by Matt Fellows in the October issue of the Oracle, and it's got a website. It's called glastonburyoracle.co.uk. So you can find this out for yourself. You can look at the article for yourself. Matt Fellows is an acupuncturist, and he's got a lot of other healing abilities too. A pretty amazing guy who I've actually met. So this is it. So yeah, it's very emotional for me to read that out to you, actually. So my huge light bulb moment is that app, which was turned into a book about children who were communicating with each other, and they were communicating with each other. He's given the game away at the end of the article, through the heart. So the book was implying something, which is that those of us who are neurodivergent actually represent a breakthrough in the human race. You see, the thing that I've always struggled with neurodivergent people is that they are capable of atrocities and hideous behaviour with each other. And indeed, attempt to get a neurodivergent person onto a battlefield wearing a uniform, ordered to kill people in the name of some nation state. It's not going to happen, is it? No, it isn't. It doesn't happen. They're not capable of such things, because for them it's unspeakable barbarism to want to do such things, to want to kill people for the values of a nation state. It just seems, doesn't compute. So that was the take home from the app that was turned into a book, black and white cover. So part of the reason I'm making this film is because I'm asking you to ask your friends and to ask people on social media and to ask around. This is a personal plea from me to you. If you can possibly find out the title and the author of this book and this app, I would be so grateful if you would share this in the comments, because it had such an impact on me. And at that time I had no awareness at all that I'm highly neurodivergent. In fact, my proper full terminology is ADHD with a side order of PDA. So I'll explain that. So ADHD, that means autistic and ADHD as well. So ADHD is defined as needs novelty. That's my definition. That's how I recognise the ADHD, which I've only known for a relatively short period of time. Actually, a really short period of time. I need novelty like people need to breathe air. It's such an extreme trait in me. And the way I like to explain the quality of ADHD is as follows. Autism, you go into my space and it's tidy and it's organised. You open up the drawers and the cupboards and oh my god, what a mess. That really is the simplest definition of those two traits together. With a side order of PDA, this is persistent demand for avoidance. In other words, if someone demands something of me, if someone makes it a mandatory thing, my immediate response is I'm just not doing it. That's it. And it's such a strong trait. It's very, very hard to go against it. It requires a huge effort of will to comply in a situation where someone's ordering me to be mindlessly obedient. Just don't do that very well. So here's the thing. What the app turned into a book, whose name I still don't know at the moment, was sharing with the world is that the human race is going through this fantastic evolution. And the fact of the matter is, autistic people and neurodivergent people are handicapped in as much as they cannot tolerate all the things that make this world a terrible place. All the loud noises, the lights which are too bright, too many people talking with each other, all this stuff. Too much talking, too much mindless, small talk. Yeah, too much mindless small talk. it actually makes me feel ill if I'm around too much small talk. I cannot tolerate it for more than a certain length of time, and I've just got to get out and get away. Yeah, it's big. It just even talking about it is making it difficult for me to think. There's something about having the time in silence. So a couple of years ago I wrote a book, and it's called The Silent Ones, and it's a book that has illustrations. And one of the tendencies of ADHD, as I'm sure many of you know, is it's very easy once you've started something to leave it and move on to something else. And I have actually, and this is also typical ADHD, I don't know where the book is, but because I'm moving house and I'm having to go through everything, I haven't started that process yet. I've only just begun to unpack. It might not look like it, but I've actually only just begun to unpack. I will at some point come across The Silent Ones, this book that I wrote, and when I do, I'm hoping and praying I'll actually do something with it at last, because I feel it's a really appropriate book to have published. It's a book with not that many words, which is really appropriate, isn't it? But it's got images, and I got as far as drawing maybe a third of the images. So what I'm explaining is that all of these neurodivergent traits, it's about the heart. And the other thing to explain is we're very familiar with the technosphere. So neurotypical people and a lot of neurodivergent people make use of the internet, and it's very useful. But actually the internet is rather like training wheels on a bicycle. When the child has their first ride on a little bike, they've got the training wheels. Eventually, when they can ride a bike, you take the training wheels off. In my personal opinion, the whole of the internet is simply the training wheels for the human race. And the ones that don't need the training wheels, the ones that can just ride without them, they access the new sphere, which is the sphere of communication, which relates to the Akashic record, which stores all information about everything that's ever happened on planet Earth. And these wonderful silent ones, they're not just children, these silent ones include adults too. They go regularly to this place. I now know the name since reading the article. It's called The Hill, and there's a telepathy tapes, and I've only just begun to explore all the information that's going to be there. I've just literally looked at it last night for 15 minutes before going to bed. Right, okay. All podcasts, all amazing information. So part of our evolution as a human race is the silent ones are the ones that are actually, they're already doing this, they're already helping us through these our awakening times. And there are many people that are able to function in the mainstream society, and I count myself as one of them, being a shamanic practitioner. There's a lot of us out there, and we are playing a really crucial role in the awakening of the human race. And it's a wonderful journey that we're all on. And I'm glad I managed to keep it together enough to be able to make this film. It's been very hard to make, actually, and there's probably 100 things that I forgot to mention, which I will mention a few in the comments when I get to that point. So thank you very much, all the silent ones, the ones who don't speak. And I think about these gurus in India and other places, they've reached a point of not speaking, and I wonder to what extent that's because in modern terminology we would say they're all neurodivergent. Who knows? And does it even matter? And do we really care? I don't know. Right, all the love to you, and thank you ever so much for listening. And please, if you can give me any leads about this book, which began its life as an app, put the details in to the comments. And once they go there, I would highly recommend it, because it changed my life reading that, and that's when I thought I was a neurotypical human. Always love to you.